This morning's topic is the four cups, something good to whine about. And if that doesn't obviously give away what the topic of the shir, what really the theme is going to be, we'll be talking about the daled kosos, the 4 cups of wine, or the 4 cups of beverage that we drink at the Seder. The first couple of sources really is just to get us in the mindset, to get us back into the theme, into some of the halachos that we already are familiar with. And then we're going to venture into another area to really, like I said, it's called wine, but we're going to talk about perhaps some of the other beverages, most specifically grape juice, whether that's an option for the Seder. I would imagine most of us in the room would probably prefer wine anyway, but just in case somebody wants grape juice, we'll figure out whether that's okay. So let's start. So there's the mitzvah to drink the daled kosos, and we'll start with source 1. It's the Pesukim in Chumash. It's from Shemos. Lachein amor livnei Yisrael ani Hashem, and so I bolded here some of the words. V'hotzesi, and I will take you out. Mitachas sivlos Mitzrayim, from the burdens of Egypt. V'talti eschem, and I will save you from their bondage. V'ga'alti eschem, and I will redeem you with an outstretched arm. V'lakachti eschem li'la'am, and I will take you for me as a nation. And we also know there's the 5th lashon, be'vesi, that comes later. Either way, you have the 4 languages here. You have the 4 words. I bolded them in the Hebrew, not in the English. But in English, it would be take you out, save you, redeem you, and take you. Okay, those would be the 4 in the English, and that's really the source. That's the marker for the daled kosos. And I didn't put her on the sheet, but because the Shulchan Aruch actually never codifies that you need to drink 4 kosos. He sort of takes it for granted. In 472, which is Reish Ayin Beis, which is where most of these halachos come from in the Shulchan Aruch, it's called the halachos of the 4 cups. And then he's got the halachos of the 1st cup, and the halachos of the 2nd cup, and so on. He never actually says, or nowhere that I saw, does he say, you should drink 4 cups. He just sort of takes it for granted based on the Gemara, based on the Mishnah, really, which says that everybody should drink at least 4 cups of wine. Al HaSeder in order, to start with Kadesh, and then the end of Magid, and then for benching, and then at the end as part of Halal. Okay, so there you drink the 4 cups, the daled kosos. Cups, by the way, is probably not the best translation. It's probably 4 glasses, or 4 goblets, but we're just going to say cups because that's what we say. Because kosos, in this context, when it's a kos Kiddush, it's not really a cup. It's something more important than that. Either way, so these are some of the halachos that are going to. Now, of course, we know that the 1st cup, the first of the daled kosos, the 1st kos, is Kiddush. So Kiddush has specific laws that come with it. Then the other kosos are the other kosos, but they're all part of the daled kosos. And so we're going to talk out here for a couple of minutes, maybe some of the differences between the daled kosos and the rest of, and Kiddush in general. And we know the Griz makes the comment, Rav Yitzchak Zev Soloveitchik, he makes the comment that Pesach, that the cups of wine that we drink on Pesach are different from regular Kiddush, in that they celebrate and they commemorate our freedom. Whereas Kiddush is celebrated in one sense, it's Kadsheo al Yayin. We know that we have to start the day of Shabbos with wine. We make the declaration. We do the same thing on Pesach, but also there's an added halacha that it's the cherus, that it's the freedom. We'll come back to this idea of cherus later, but it's the idea of the freedom, and so because of that there are going to be some differences. The first difference we'll see on our sheet is the time. This past Friday night, probably many of us did this. Many of us probably made 7 o'clock Shabbos this week, or some other early Shabbos time. And we're allowed to do that because you can start Shabbos anytime after Plag. Even if you make regular Shabbos, and you make Shabbos at Shkia, at sunset, you're probably making Kiddush before nightfall, before Tzis, which is totally okay. However, on Pesach, what do? On Pesach, we wait. That's the first halacha. So we'll see the Shulchan Aruch. We'll do it from the English if anybody wants to read the Hebrew. One's table should be set before Yom Tov begins in order to be able to eat right away. Right, so you should have the table set so that in theory you could start right away if you don't have to fight about who's going where and make the Seder plates. But Kiddush should not be recited until nightfall. You should wait until Chashecha, until night, unlike a regular Friday night or a regular other Yom Tov. And see the Mishnah Berurah. Why? One cannot recite Kiddush on Pesach before nightfall, unlike other holidays or Shabbos, because eating matzah is connected to eating the Karban Pesach, which can only be eaten at night. And Kiddush can only be recited when matzah can be eaten. So there's a couple of steps here. Karban Pesach, the Pesach offering, can only be eaten at night. We know that it has to be Vada Yom Tov, so it has to be night when you eat the Karban Pesach. Good. So that has to be at night. And since matzah is supposed to be eaten with the Karban Pesach, we don't, because we don't have a Karban Pesach, but matzah is supposed to be eaten with the Karban Pesach, so matzah can only be at night. So when can you start the meal? Only when you can have the matzah, which is night, and therefore you can only make Kiddush at night. So that's our first difference between Kiddush and Pesach. A regular Kiddush, a regular Friday night Kiddush, a regular Yom Tov Kiddush, or second day's Pesach, anything, you can make it as early as you want, so long as it's after Plag. Pesach, you can't start Kiddush because since it's the first of the 4 cups, you can't start until the night, until it's Vada night. That's our first difference between a regular Kiddush and the Dalet Kosos. Okay. Second difference. So my outline and my source sheets are a little out of order, so we'll go to what I would call maybe the third difference. But either way, when we drink the Dalet Kosos, what do? Everyone knows this one? What do we do when we drink? We recline. Right. We don't lean. We recline. Okay? Leaning is like this. Reclining is like this. It's different. Right? If I were to sit on a chair, I shouldn't move because it won't catch me on video, but it's okay. When I'm sitting in a chair, this is to lean. I don't think any of us would find this comfortable to try to drink. This is to recline. This is much more comfortable. So that's just technically the Heseba is to recline. So if you can, at your Seder, so assuming the person next to you isn't in the way, you should probably try to angle your body that you're reclining. You're like laying back. It's much more comfortable. It's much more derech chirus, the way a king would do, more so than just kind of tilting over. Either way, we don't do that on Friday night. When you make Kiddush, there's no mitzvah of Heseba. Okay? On Pesach Kiddush, there is a mitzvah of Heseba because it's the first of the Dalet Kosos. So look at Shulchan Aruch, so source 3. When you recline, don't recline forward or back or to the right, rather to the left. Okay? So first of all, there's the mitzvah of Heseba, but then there's also the idea that we should go to the left. And for all the lefties in the room, for whom that's uncomfortable, you should still go to the left. See, when I go to the left, no big deal, because I use my right hand to drink and to eat, because I'm a righty. However, when you're a lefty, if you're going to the left, certainly if you're leaning, it's very difficult. But even if you're reclining, it's kind of difficult to do everything with your left hand while you're reclining to the left. And yet you have to go to the left, righty or lefty. Why? Anyone know this one? Because you could choke. Right? Shema yaktim kana leveshet. I'm going to get to you in 1 second. Shema yaktim kana leveshet. Shtehu b'tzad yamin. Mishnah points out that that perhaps the trachea will precede the esophagus, what we will call the windpipe and the food pipe, that perhaps if you lean the wrong way, if you recline the wrong way, the esophagus, the food pipe, will be pushed out of the way, the trachea will come forward, the windpipe, and the food will go down, the drink will go down the windpipe, and you'll choke. And because we're afraid of that, so even though it's inconvenient for a lefty to both recline to the left and eat with their left hand, you continue to go to the left because it's more important that you not choke. Yes?
Well, you answered my question.
Okay, good. Okay, so that's another thing, the Heseba. Okay? We're going to have also perhaps who's obligated. We know women are obligated in the Dalet Kosos, even though women are generally not obligated in what we'll call time-bound positive commandments, mitzvahs asesha zman grama, a positive commandment that has a specific time. So, like, I don't know, someone want to, what do you think? Anybody? Lulav, right? Fill in, right? Okay, any of these time-bound positive commands, women are not obligated. Maybe on a rabbinic level, there's some schar to the performance, or maybe there's even some obligation. But certainly on a biblical level, they are not commanded in time-bound positive commandments. Okay, so the Dalet Kosos would be a time-bound positive command. However, women are obligated. Why? Af hein hayu ba'oso hanes. It's a Gemara in Pesachim, source number 4. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, women are obligated in the 4 cups, for they were also in the miracle. Because they were saved from Egypt just as we were saved. Perhaps even they were the reason for the salvation. Mishum nashim tzadkanios, because of the righteous women. We know they took instruments, right? We know at the Kriyas Yamsuf, the women had instruments to sing songs. We just sang. We did a cappella. They actually had instruments. Why did they have instruments? Because they took them when they left Egypt, because they knew they were going to be saved. Right? So whether the women were in the miracle or whether the women were the catalysts for the miracles, either way, the women now have to celebrate in the same way as the men, even though it's a time-bound positive command. Okay? So because of that, women have to drink the 4 cups, and women also recline. Look at source 5. Shulchan Aruch. Again, these are all from the same siman in Shulchan Aruch. So the Shulchan Aruch says that women do not need to recline. They don't require Heseba unless they are chashuv. And that's a word that's going to come up a lot later in a different context, but unless the women are chashuv, if the women are distinguished or important. And so then the Ramah makes a claim that all of you we should all go tell our wives, all of our women today are chashuv. Okay? That's the comment of the Ramah. All the women are chashuv, and therefore they should have to recline, or they should recline. But then he quotes from the Raviyah, However, they don't recline, for they rely on the Raviyah, who claim that no one needs to recline these days. And the Raviyah explains that nobody, not the men either, nobody reclines, since none of us eat reclining anymore. None of us lay down on couches when we eat. So since none of us do that, or for the most part, I guess we don't do that, so it's not really a normal way to eat, and so there's no reason to recline. There's no longer a need. So once there's no need in general, certainly for the women, with this whole chashuv question, there's no real need for the women. Okay, so if the women in your houses would like to recline, they can recline, and if the women would not like to recline, they don't have to recline. The difference will be if they were to drink one of the kosos and then say afterwards, hey, I forgot to do haseba. Presumably a woman would not have to repeat the kosos, whereas the men would have to repeat some of the kosos. 1 and 3, not 2 and 4. Okay. Yeah, 1 and 3, not 2 and 4.
If they didn't recline, they would have to repeat?
Yeah, in general, like if you forget to recline for matzah, right? Let's just stick with matzah because that one's easy, right? If matzah, if you don't recline when you eat the matzah, you would actually have to eat the gzayis matzah again. However, if a woman does not recline, a woman would not have to repeat the achila. Why? Because women don't have to recline. They can, perhaps they should, but since they don't have to, they don't repeat. Whereas since a man has to recline, if he forgets, he has to repeat certain of the mitzvos from the Seder. Okay. So that's another thing. Let's talk 1 or 2 more quickly. The size of the kos and the size of the shtia, the size of how big the cup has to be, and how much of it you have to drink. In general, a cup for Kiddush has to be how big? We'll just go with halachic terminology first, then we'll define it. A revius. Okay, a revius, which translates to a fourth, but really it's a revius, which is based on calculations that I don't really want to get into. However, a revius is generally defined as the smallest defined liquid measure, which is approximately between 3 ounces and 5 ounces, or 86 and 157 milliliters. Okay? So, if we'll just break that down for a minute. So Reb Chaim Na'eh was the Mekel opinion in this. He said that a kos, that a revius, is defined as 2.908 ounces. Because I know we're here, we'll do milliliters, 86 milliliters. Now, by the way, that should be easy to remember because of a gematria I'm about to give you. It's a good mnemonic. The word kos, the Hebrew word for cup, kos, chaf, vav, samach, 26 and 60 is 86. 86 milliliters is Reb Chaim Na'eh's Mekel Shita. Chazon Ish, who's always labeled as a machmir, though it's not always true, the Chazon Ish, his kos, there's actually some machlokas what he said, whether it was 5.07 ounces or 5.3 ounces. The difference in milliliters would be 150 or 157. We generally assume 157, which is 5.3 ounces. And his mnemonic is, anyone? No one's fast enough? Kos malay. A full cup. Kos, again, is 86. Malay, if you add mem, lamed, and aleph, you get another 71. 86 and 71, 157. Okay? So it's an easy mnemonic to remember. Reb Chaim Na'eh's Shita, 86, and the Chazon Ish's Shita, 157. Generally, we paskin somewhere in the middle. Most of us rely on Rav Moshe. Rav Moshe Feinstein defined a kos dirabanan, when you're dealing with something that requires a shear on the rabbinic level, 3.3 ounces, 97.6 milliliters is Rav Moshe's dirabanan shita, and doraisa is 4.4, and I forgot to write down how many that is. Somebody could check. It's about 28 milliliters to the ounce. Okay, I apologize, I didn't get that down. But Rav Moshe's dirabanan is 3.3, which is 97.6, and his doraisa is 4.4 ounces, and do the math to get the milliliters. I apologize. It should be about 120 if I'm adding correctly. 130 probably. Okay, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Okay.
Kos malay is overflowing usually.
Kos malay, right?
It's overflowing.
Is overflowing. Okay, so that would be for the Chazon Ish. Yeah.
Not to throw you off on your schedule, but I didn't see it here, but maybe it is here. There's I don't know if it's mincha or vacha that you're not allowed to pour your own glass of wine.
Yes, so that's
I don't know if it's there.
I haven't seen that in halacha. I believe that's a minhag, that we don't pour our own cups at the Seder as a derech eretz. Again, because we are kings, we have somebody else pour for us.
The size of the cup. What if the cup is actually bigger?
Good. What if the cup is bigger than the revius? What if you have a Viking goblet and your cup holds, let's say, 7 ounces? Okay? Which is much bigger than the share. It holds 200 milliliters. How much do you have to drink? Kiddush on Friday night, you have to drink what's called a rov revius or malo lugmav, a cheekful, or with a rov revius, the majority of a revius, which depending on which shita you use, but let's say Rav Moshe. So for Kiddush Shabbos morning 3:3 or Kiddush Friday night 4:4, so you would need either 1.65 to drink or 2.2 to drink. Okay, if we go with Reb Chaim Naeh, that 3 ounces, 86 milliliters, is a revius. So Friday night, you would need to drink 1.5 ounces, 43 milliliters. However, on Pesach, that's not true. The Dalet Kosos, there's a machlokas between, we'll say the Rambam, the Shulchan Aruch, the Mishnah Berurah, and the Pischei Tshuva, okay, who say the different things. The Gemara in Pesachim says Rov Kos. Tosos there says half the revius, which is Mila Lugmav. The Rambam, and we have some of this here, it's in source 6, how much to drink. The size of the cup should be a revius, and one should drink at least it all, or at least most of it. Okay? There are those who say one must drink half of the cup, even if it holds many revios. Mishnah Berurah, even though normally most of a revius suffices for Kiddush, Milo Lugmav, even from a large cup, if you had a 10-ounce cup, for Kiddush, you still only need to drink Milo Lugmav, half of a revius. However, for the 4 cups, we are stringent and we require most of the cup. Okay? So if you have an extremely large kos for the Dalet Kosos, you have to drink Rov Kos, not Rov Revius. So if you have,
2 to 4.
I'm sorry, the whole thing, all of them, because it's not about Kiddush, it's about Dalet Kosos.
Okay.
Yeah, the 4 cups. If you have a 10-ounce kos, if you have a 500 milliliter kos, right? Pick any number you want. That's far bigger than the shear. So for Friday night, it wouldn't matter. Just drink your Rov Revius. Pesach night, it matters. You're going to have to drink half the cup. And so, if you don't want to get drunk or you don't want to get a stomach ache, use a kos. That's a revius. If you measure, it's not so hard. Go home, take a measuring cup, pour from your kos into your measuring cup, your Pesach measuring cup, of course, but pour from your kos into your Pesach measuring cup. If the cup holds 100 milliliters, you're fine. You're at least holding from Rav Moshe. You're certainly holding from Reb Chaim Naeh. If you want to be a machmir, you want a Chazon Ish cup, make sure it holds 157. So if it holds 160 milliliters, you're fine. Right? A 5.3 ounce kos. You don't need more than that. If you take a kos that's bigger than that, you're going to have to drink way more wine than the rest of us. So it's probably not the best idea.
So no matter what, you have to fill the cup, no matter how big it is.
Yeah, no matter how big the cup is, you've got to fill the cup. And for Pesach, you've got to drink at least half the cup, arguably the whole cup.
So when you pour the second cup, is there still stuff?
Right. So when you pour the second cup, and then during Magid, for the makos, you fling out some of the wine. You should fling out, pour out, dip out, whatever you want to do. Right.
You can't leave it in then. If you're going from one cup to the other and you have a little bit left over.
I'm sorry, what do you mean?
Is it like Pugum, like you have to dispense it and put it out to the...
Generally not. Generally, we're not going to rinse out.
Oh.
So you do Magid, you have your cup, you fill it up, and then you do Dam, Tardeya, Keenan, right? You do the whole thing, and then there's a little less wine than there used to be. Take the bottle, fill it up, now you have a full cup again, and then drink half of it when you make the bracha. Okay? So those are some of the differences between a regular Kiddush and the Dalet Kosos. Now let's kind of shift gears into what beverage. So we'll go to the bottom source on the page, source 7, the Shulchan Aruch here. That tells us that Misha Eno Shosa Yain Mifnei Shamaziko, if a person does not drink wine because it will damage him, it's bad for him. Whether that means, it's a person who just can't hold their alcohol, whether that's sulfites, whether that's, a real, heart condition, and the doctor says, whatever it is, Mifnei Shamaziko, Osono, or you hate it, you despise wine. Nonetheless, you have to force yourself, vilishtos, to drink it, lekayim mitzvahs arba kosos, in order to fulfill the mitzvah of the 4 cups. So the Shulchan Aruch is really a machmir here. The Shulchan Aruch says absolutely you have to drink 4 cups of wine. He uses the term yayin. Okay, even if the wine's going to damage you, or even if you hate it, you still have to drink 4 cups of wine. Okay. Then he continues. There are a couple of sources here. They're out of order. I put all the Shulchan Aruchs together, then all the Ramahs, then all the Mishnah Berurahs, just because it would read easier. Mitzvah lachzer achar yayin adom. You should drink red wine, and the Mishnah Berurah points this out. Some of us are probably familiar to remind us of the blood. We use red wine rather than white wine. Mishnah Berurah says 2 reasons. One, because red wine is traditionally better than white wine. We can argue that, but for another time. Because the red wine will remind us of the blood. Interesting Hasidish minhag. I don't know if anybody does this, Most of us probably use silver cups, silver kosos, at the Seder and in general. However, there's a Hasidic minhag to use a glass kos. Why? Because if you're using red wine to remind you of the blood, if you use a glass kos, you'll see it. Whereas if you use a silver kos, you only see it from the top, so you don't really get the sense that it's red so much. Interesting minhag, so if somebody has a glass kos, you have a choice. Glass or silver, you're probably better off with glass. It's also going to taste better. That's not a halachic issue. Wine tastes better out of glass than it does out of silver.
Is there an issue talking about the glass if you use plastic?
We generally say that something of substance, something of chashivos is better. There certainly are halachic questions in terms of using plastic. Though you're probably yotze, I would still advise for the use of glass or silver. Also, just in talking about plastic, the flimsy, like really cheap plastic ones, really I try to shy away from. But if you get those nice ones, the ones that have the stem and you got to put it together yourself, it's definitely better. But I would still encourage, if you can, to try to use, like a non-disposable cup. That's probably the best way. Non-disposable is certainly preferred to disposable because it gives it more of a sense of chashivas, more of an importance. Since we're performing a mitzvah, try to do with something that's more chashiv. But certainly you'd be yotze, but just take it up a notch if you can. Okay, so try to use the red wine, and then he throws in here that also yotzim biyayin mevushal, that we fulfill the mitzvah with cooked wine, with mevushal wine. We'll have to discuss what mevushal wine is, why would be mevashal the wine, why we would cook it. But either way, he assumes, he takes for granted that mevushal wine would not have been understood. Had he just said yayin, you wouldn't have known yayin mevushal. He has to tell you yayin mevushal. So it seems mevushal is on a lower level than non-mevushal wine. Okay, and we'll discuss why that is in a minute. The Mishnah Brura, let's just see those here. We'll do those from the English. One must drink, since the mitzvah of the drinking, unlike Shabbos and Yom Tov. Okay, you have to actually do this. Normally, Friday night Kiddush, I can make Kiddush, you could listen, say Amen, and we're all done. You don't actually have to drink any wine on Friday night or Shabbos morning. So long as you're in the presence of somebody who is making Kiddush, and then you're eating the Suda, but you listen with intention, and you say Amen, you're fine. You don't actually have to drink. However, on Pesach, since the mitzvah is actually to drink, you have to drink it. Everybody needs their own kos, and everybody needs to drink. You can mix. This is where he's saying that if you don't like the wine or whatever, you don't like the taste, or it's going to harm you, so you can mix. You can put in some grape juice or wine. You can do what they call meziga. Red wine is preferred because it's better, or it'll remind us of the blood of the slaughtered children. And though we may use mevushal wine, because Shulchan Aruch said you can use yayin mevushal, he says it's still preferred to use non-mevushal unless you happen to have a mevushal that's better. Which, again, Mishnah Brura is assuming you're not going to find a mevushal wine that is better than non-mevushal wine. Mevushal, again, means cooked.
Pretty cooked wine?
Cooked wine, yes. There's a lot of wine. You go into any kosher wine place, or you go into the local LCBO, you'll find that if you just look at the bottles, a lot of them are going to be mevushal wines. I don't know offhand like which companies are and are not, but a lot of the wines are, and traditionally the better wines are the non-mevushal wines.
Yeah, didn't you say that mevushal is lower wine than the other one?
Yes.
Doesn't it say la lot velo lorit?
Yes, correct. Which is why the Shulchan Aruch says you're allowed to use mevushal, but Mishnah Brura says it's better to use non-mevushal. Okay? Yeah.
You mentioned mixing, but you didn't really mention percentages of grape juice to wine.
So long as it's, again, you could consider it wine so long as it's rove wine. If the majority of your cup is wine, you could still consider it a cup of wine. Once it's a majority of something else, it's going to be considered something else. Now, if you can drink something else, fine. If you can't drink something else, you're going to have a problem. That's where we're going now. Okay?
So what happens if the wine is warm?
If the wine is warm, it's probably just not going to, depends what. If it's like a sweet wine, it's not going to taste good. If it's a dry wine, you're better off.
You'd be surprised how good it is.
Okay. Again, when I say cooked wine, I don't mean like pour it into a pot in your own house. I mean, as part of the process of making the wine, some wineries are going to cook the wine. They'll do bishul, right? More than just pasteurization. They'll actually boil it, or a new process called flash boiling, which actually doesn't ruin the taste as much as regular boiling does. But I'm not talking about pour it into a pot, boil it up at home, then scoop your cup in. I'm talking about buying a bottle that says mevushal or buying a bottle that says non-mevushal. Okay? So assuming you don't have help at home, you're probably better off with a non-mevushal. If you do have non-Jewish help at home, so then you're probably better off with mevushal just to avoid any other halachic issues such as stam yenam and yin nesach. Which was the topic of a shir I've given recently, so some of this is going to be familiar to me. But just as a very quick aside, we know that traditionally we said you couldn't drink the wine of a non-Jew, and you can't drink the wine that a non-Jew or certainly an idolater touches or handles, unless it's mevushal. If you have yayin that's mevushal, and there's a source that I didn't put on your sheets, but the Rambam points out that so long as you boil the wine, as long as you have yayin mevushal, doesn't matter if an idolater handles it, because they would never use it for idolatrous purposes, and therefore there's no problem. Okay? So mevushal gets us around the issues of stam yenam and yin nesach. And therefore, if you're going to have non-Jewish help, who's going to be handling your bottles, cleaning up your table, setting your table, pouring your wine, doing all that stuff, you probably should only keep open bottles of mevushal wine. So even though you're going to step down for arba kosos, you're stepping up in other halachic areas, so you're probably better off or just make sure they don't touch the wine. Yeah?
When you're saying to have non-Jewish help, it also applies to people that are non-observant, no?
No.
No. Really?
No, because unless your non-observant Jewish friend is a pagan, which I'm assuming he's not, right? Just because you're non-observant doesn't make you a pagan, right? So the real issue, right, is that perhaps they're using it for idolatrous purposes, or it's an issue of intermarriage. Neither one of those is really going to exist with a non-observant Jew. Right? There's definitely a greater halachic discussion there, but my understanding and the conclusions I had come to recently in my own research and speaking to Rabbanim was that non-observant people would not fall into that category because, again, we're not worried that they're doing pagan stuff, and there's no issue of marrying a non-observant Jew's son or daughter. So long as they're themselves are,
I understood that a non-Jew can be at your Shabbos table, but it's forbidden to be at Pesach in the first place. So
could be, but again, I'm not talking about invitees. That's why I said help.
Okay, but they're still non-Jew,
Yeah, I'm saying, but if you have a live-in, who's around, so they're not at the Pesach Seder. So when you're done, they're going to clean up, right? The Seder's done. We finished Nirtzah. We did Chad Gadya. Wine's still on the table. They're going to come clean up. If they come clean up and I have an open bottle of non-mevushal wine, I can no longer drink it, right? So that's what I'm saying.
That's if they handle it, right?
It's only if they handle it. Looking at it's not a problem. They can be in the presence.
They're allowed to look at it? Okay.
Yes, right? Look but don't touch. Right? Standard Jewish practice. Look but don't touch.
Could you have a non-Christian guest for the Seder?
So again, I don't want to get into all the halachic issues of Jews and non-Jews, but again, just suffice it to say that if a non-Jew handles your non-mevushal wine, you probably should not be drinking it anymore. Okay, we're going to just sort of close that part of the discussion at that point.
Even if the bottle's closed, right?
If the bottle's closed, you're fine. If the bottle's closed, you're fine. An open bottle, right? Closed meaning if you put the cork back in, that doesn't count. Meaning the cork has never been taken out. Okay, sealed bottle. If you have a sealed bottle of non-mevushal wine, anybody can touch it. That's not a problem, otherwise it never gets shipped anywhere. But once the bottle is open, you should not have a non-Jew, for fear that they are pagan, and doing idolatrous stuff to your wines. We're going to close the discussion at this point. We're going to move on. Again, an open bottle of non-mevushal wine should not be handled by a non-Jew. If it is, you probably should stop drinking it. Good. So, that's the difference between mevushal and non-mevushal. Now, let's go to grape juice for a minute. Okay? Why does grape juice enter the discussion? So one, grape juice enters the discussion because of this halacha the Shulchan Aruch just said, that you should try to drink the wine. Let's say you're actually under doctor's orders not to have wine. What do you do then? So if there's a real halacha of drinking the wine, do you force yourself against doctor's orders? Do you just skip the dal? You certainly shouldn't do that. Do you skip the daled kosos altogether, or can you use some other substance like grape juice? So there was a tshuva, there was a responsum, published in the 1920s, if I'm not mistaken, by Rabbi Louis Ginsburg, who was, for all intents and purposes, he was the Rav Harashi of the conservative Judaism in the States at the time. And the 20s is important because the 20s, anyone know their American history? Prohibition. There was the 18th Amendment. I should know this. Right? The 18th Amendment was prohibition, 1920s. You were not allowed to have alcohol except for religious purposes. You would need what's called a religious permit or a rabbi's visa in order to allow you to carry, to sell, to drink alcohol. Because if you had it for religious purposes, it was okay. So, because the question now came up, well, should I be relying on this, or can I just drink a different substance? So Rabbi Ginsburg published this responsa, in which he claimed basically that grape juice is fine for all purposes. Anything that you're supposed to do with wine, you can do with grape juice, probably with the exception of Purim, but anything you can do with wine, you can do with grape juice. And so, there was a whole tumult in the Orthodox world, because now you have a respected rabbi who is not, from the Orthodox camp, but a respected rabbi who's like the teacher in JTS for like 50 years, who publishes a tshuva that you're allowed to use grape juice for everything. The Orthodox want to continue using the wine. The government is saying, hey, wait a minute, why using wine? Here, Rabbi Ginsburg said, you can use grape juice. So big tumult. So there were a lot of tshuvas published then in response to this. In the end, by the way, Moshe came out that at least for Kiddush, and we're going to, again, see the difference between Kiddush and Pesach, but at least for Kiddush, grape juice is fine for all things wine. Okay, so you can substitute grape juice for wine, at least according to Rav Moshe. But what were some of the issues? So let's look at source number 8. It's Gemara in Bava Basra. The Gemara there says, Amar Zutra Bar Tuvia Amar Rav. That's an important line. He says that Kiddush can only be recited using wine that's fit to be poured, or really fit to be libated upon the Mizbeach. We know part of the avoda in the Beis Hamikdash was to pour wine at times on the Mizbeach. So only wine which is fit for the Mizbeach is fit for Kiddush. And we say what? And that's to come to exclude fresh wine straight out of the barrel, which means it really hasn't fermented yet. And he says, well, Amar Rav, didn't Rav say that Sochet Adam, the last line there, Sochet Adam Eshkol Shalanavim V'Omer Alav Kiddush Hayom. A person can squeeze a bunch of grapes, obviously before Shabbos, because you can't squeeze on Shabbos, but Friday afternoon, take a bunch of grapes, squeeze them into a cup, 20 minutes later when Shabbos hits, pick up the cup, make Kiddush on that. That is what we call grape juice. Right? That's classic grape juice, right? Fresh squeezed grape juice. Right? So you squeeze a bunch of grapes, you make Kiddush on that. Okay? This would seem to then be an open and shut case of grape juice is fine. Okay? It would seem that grape juice is fine, because you could take a couple of grapes, squeeze them, and make Kiddush on it. Yet, there is Rabbi Simcha Horowitz published a whole tshuva in response to Rabbi Ginsburg's tshuva. Rabbi Horowitz was Orthodox, published a tshuva in response, basically claiming that grape juice was not good, for 3 major reasons. One is the bracha. Perhaps you do not make a bracha of Borei Pri Hagafen on grape juice. And why not? So, I skipped the source on the sheet, but there's a whole discussion in the Gemara in Brachos. It was a little too technical to put on the sheet. The discussion in the Gemara in Brachos, if you eat a food in a way that it's not normally eaten, what bracha do you make? So let's say you have onions are a good one. If somebody eats a raw onion, what bracha do you make? Shahakol, because nobody eats raw onions. Okay? However, if you eat a cooked onion, what bracha do you make? Adama, because that's how it's supposed to be eaten. Say you eat a potato. What bracha do we make on baked potato? As part of salads. If you picked up an onion and ate it like an apple.
What is that?
If you ate an onion like an apple.
Onion is definitely a gray area.
I would have thought onions are open and shut. Let's stick with certain root vegetables. Okay? Let's go to potatoes. Let's go with a potato. What bracha do you make on a baked potato? Adama. What bracha do you make on a raw potato?
Shakol.
Okay. Now, it happens to be, I don't know of too many examples of this, but let's take a vegetable that you would eat raw. A vegetable that's traditionally eaten raw?
Carrots.
Okay, but carrots are also eaten cooked. How about a vegetable that's eaten raw but not eaten cooked?
Radish.
Fine, radish. Okay, we'll go with radish. So a radish, when you eat a raw radish, what bracha do you make? Adama, because that's how it's supposed to be eaten. When you eat a cooked radish, what bracha do you make? Shahakol. Okay? Not shahakol, shahakol. Okay? So you make the bracha of shahakol. Why? Because that's not how it's supposed to be done, because you have downgraded the item. The Gemara uses the example of shlakos. I don't know how to translate shlakos. I think it might be leek, but I'm not sure. Okay, so whatever it is, we'll stick with radish. We'll use our example. So, since you have changed it, you would make a different bracha. Grape juice. If you take wine, if you take grapes, squeeze them out, and then you do what we do with grape juice, which actually requires boiling, okay? Boiling prior to the fermentation, and therefore they will never ferment. That's why grape juice cannot get you drunk. There's no alcohol in grape juice, and nor will there ever be. So you take the grapes, and now you are consuming grapes in what? In a non-normal way.
Downgraded.
You have downgraded the grape, right? Because you've made it into grape juice. So it becomes a bracha of shahakol, much like apple juice. This is the contention of Rashi. The Tosos, on the other hand, Tosos and others, claim that that's not true. You only change the bracha when not only do you change the item, but you downgrade the item. It's not enough to change the item, you have to downgrade it. So, grape juice, or pressed grape, or boiled pressed grape, isn't necessarily a downgrade. It's a change, not a downgrade. So now we could go back to our radish and argue whether cooking a radish is a downgrade. I'd probably still say yes.
The onion too, keeping it uncooked isn't a downgrade, you didn't do anything to it.
So good. So onions are gray area. We're just going to ignore onions. Okay? It was a bad example. Just forget I said it. Right? So when you downgrade, so that's when you change the bracha. So Shulchan Aruch paskins this way. Look at Shulchan Aruch number 9. The blessing on wine is bori pri hagafen. The blessing on wine is bori pri hagafen, whether it's cooked or uncooked wine. Even yayin mavushal, which is downgraded, it's not downgraded significantly enough to change the bracha. So it would seem then that grape juice falls into the same category. It's been changed, not downgraded, and therefore you would remain with a bori pri hagafen. You would not make it to shahakol. But that's one contention, the difference between grape juice and wine. Another issue, the difference between grape juice and wine. This will be sources 10, 11, and 12. Legabe yayin mavushal, again, most of the discussion about grape juice, at least in the poskim, is going, at least in Shulchan Aruch, Rambam, they're not going to be talking about our grape juice. They'll be talking about yayin mavushal, because their grape juice is slightly different. We'll get to that in 1 second. But they talk about that it's only roy l'mizbeach. That's that Gemara we just saw. Menachos and Baba Basra, source 10. One may not bring for libation sweet, smoked, or cooked wine. If it's brought, it's puzzle. So yayin mavushal cannot be offered on the mizbeach, which you would then think means that you can't make Kiddush on yayin mavushal, uncooked. On grape juice also, obviously, because grape juice is also cooked. Okay, grape juice we're generally going to compare to yayin mavushal.
Unless it's fresh squeeze grape.
One second. So hold that for 1 second. Okay. So the Rambam codifies this way also. Okay. One can only recite Kiddush, source 11. One can only recite Kiddush on wine that is fit for libation on the mizbeach. Shulchan Aruch takes the opposite approach. Look at Shulchan Aruch 12. We may recite Kiddush on wine that has been cooked. Others say that we do not do so. Ramah, Paskins Ras Ashkenazim, we may recite Kiddush on cooked wine. And why? Now go back up to source 10. Rav only meant to exclude souring wine, mixed, uncovered, lees, I don't know, I have no idea what that is, or with foul odor. Okay?
Leaves at the bottom of the bottle.
Oh yeah? Like sediment.
Yeah.
Okay, terrific, thank you. Okay, so that's, meaning when we said that you can't use certain things on the Mizbeach, the Shulchan Aruch is saying that did not include mavushal. It means only actually bad wine. Mavushal is not bad enough. Again, I don't know of any mavushal wines that have won awards. I know of kosher wines that have won awards. I don't know of mavushal wines. They're out there. Thank you. We have a food service guy, right? So they are out there. There's probably few and far between. Good. So at least, there's less good mavushal wines than there are non-mavushal wines. And so mavushal we know is not quite as good, but Shulchan Aruch is telling you it's not bad enough. Right? That's really what he's saying. Okay? He's basically saying that the degree that you need for Kiddush and the degree you need for the Mizbeach are different. On the Mizbeach, fine, you can't put mavushal wine because it's not the best. For Kiddush, you don't need the best, you just need good, and therefore you can make Kiddush on mavushal wine. Presumably, therefore, you could make Kiddush on grape juice also. Last thing is going to be the difference between our grape juice and their grape juice. The grape juice in the Gemara, what did he do? He took grapes, squeezed them into a cup, and drank it. What does that still have potential for? Fermentation. That can become wine. Our grape juice is pressed again, boiled, pressed again, boiled, and then bottled. Our grape juice will never become wine. And therefore, our grape juice lacks the thing that we will call fermentability. It's not a word. Fermentability. That's going to be the difference between our grape juice and their grape juice. And therefore, when Shulchan Aruch says that you can have yayin mavushal, and we keep saying yayin mavushal means our grape juice, that's not necessarily true. Louis Ginsburg said it is. Rabbi Horowitz said it's not. Rav Moshe, however, paskin that alcohol content, fermentation or fermentability, is not important legabe Kiddush. Okay? So, Kiddush, we're not on Pesach yet. Kiddush, you can make Kiddush on grape juice, no problem. So if you don't like wine, or wine bothers you, or mazika, or sona, or whatever it is, you don't want to have, or you're pregnant, I know that doesn't apply to anyone in this room, right? But you can't have wine, so use grape juice, no problem for Kiddush. So says Rav Moshe. Let's go back to Pesach. There are different dinim for the Dalakosas than there is for Kiddush. What's going to be a difference here? And it's going to be that word chashuv. It's going to be that word cherus again. Freedom, kingship, being distinguished, being important. Look at source 13 and 14 together. Source 13 says, Shasan Chai, if you drink undiluted grape wine, really right out of battle, their wine was much stronger than ours. So if you was undiluted, you have fulfilled your obligation. Rava says, and this is how we paskin, you fulfilled the aspect of wine, but you have not fulfilled the aspect of freedom of cherus. And the Rashbam explains for us. Kolomar, enzu mitzvah shalema. It's not the complete mitzvah of the Dalakosos. Why? She'en chashivas el b'yayin mazug. It's only chashiv if the wine is diluted, because only then will it taste good. Again, our wines don't need to be diluted. If you dilute our wines, are going to be bad. Their wines were probably like, 40 or 50% alcohol, so you needed to dilute it to get a good taste. V'hani mili b'yeno shalahem. He tells us this is only their wine. There's only Gemara wine. Didaro al chad plus, right, that you had to mix it at a ratio of 1 to 3. Avol yeno shalanu lo ba'y miziga. Our wines don't need to be diluted. Okay. What's the point he's making, though? That there's no chashivas, there's no distinguishment, there's no importance, there's no enjoyment, we could say, of drinking a wine that you don't enjoy, of drinking a non-diluted old school wine that you don't enjoy. Which brings us to say what? What would make us say that you can have grape juice if you don't enjoy wine? That would lead me to the conclusion that if I don't enjoy wine, I can have grape juice. Unless we're going to say what? That I use the word chashuv as a objective standard. Depends how I define the word chashuv. Machlokas the Rav Yosef Dov Soloveitchik, and Rav Moshe Feinstein in how I define the word chashuv. Do I define it subjectively, in which case we would talk about what I enjoy, or do I define objectively, and therefore what is better? So, if we define, like Rav Moshe, that it's an objective standard, and therefore freedom, cherus, or chashivas, requires alcohol. It has to be something upon which you would make a l'chaim. It would be the loose definition. So, according to Rav Moshe, can you use grape juice for the Dalakosos? No, because it's not objectively chashuv. According to the Rav, freedom is expressed through enjoyment. Cherus and chashivas are subjective. And therefore, if you prefer grape juice or you're ill, you can use grape juice. You should know the Rav, it's brought down, I forget in which one of the Sarim, about what the Rav used to do. When he was younger, when he was really able, he tried to be machmir. He only used wine for all 4 kosas. As he got older and sicker, he started to rely on his own psak of grape juice. So even though he paskined all along that you can do with what you enjoy, he was machmir for basically Rav Moshe Shita for an objective standard, and therefore used wine. But when he was no longer able, he went to what he felt was his more lenient opinion and started using the grape juice because he couldn't have the wine. Okay. Now just look at that last source I gave you here.
Excuse me?
Yes.
I think that I saw somewhere in Nefesh Harav that he was drinking only Medusha.
Yes, because the Rav was a brisker, non-mevushal. I would think non-mevushal. I don't remember seeing this. I don't remember discussing this with someone who did know from Halagas Harav. It would seem the Rav, also when he was younger, not only just being machmir for wine, was probably machmir for no sugar added and for non-mevushal. Presumably because the Rav was a brisker, and because the Rav held from the Rambam. And the Rambam, not the Rambam I'm about to read you, but an earlier Rambam, where the Rambam basically says that anything that's not fit for Mizbeach is not fit for Kiddush, and therefore also the briskers extend to not fit for the Dalakosos. And therefore it would have to be no additives and non-mevushal. So thank you for pointing that. I believe it's non-mevushal, though. I think it was machmir for non-mevushal, again, until he got older and he needed the grape juice. Okay, last source, and with this we'll close, we'll wrap up. Look at this last halach in Rambam Hilchos Chametz U'Matzah. Arba kosas ha'elu, these kosas tarch limzo gosan, you have to dilute them. Again, old school wine. Kedesha tiyeh shtia areva, that it should be what? It should be pleasurable or enjoyable. Hakol lefi hayayin ulefi das hashosa. Everything in accordance with the wine itself and the one who is drinking it. Which means if we're medayik in this Rambam, if we could make a diuk, we make an inference from this Rambam where he says areva, where he says that it should be enjoyable or pleasurable, that would mean like the Rav. Drink what you enjoy more. Which is how Piskei Tshuvos brings down all of his different shittos. He says, one who can't handle wine, either because you're going to get lightheaded, you'll get a stomach ache, the doctor tells you not to. You should use, or even if you enjoy it that much more, you should use grape juice. He says certainly women and children can rely on this. Men, we should try to use wine to the best of our ability. If we need to dilute, certainly before going with a straight grape juice. And the one thing he does point out about grape juice is make sure that you're using a grape juice not from concentrate. Use an actual real grape juice. I believe all the kedems are fine. Kedem grape juice, I believe, says on it, not from concentrate. But don't use one of those, don't buy like a frozen can and then put water in it. Certainly don't do that. If you're going to use grape juice, make sure you use a real grape juice, not a diluted. But that would be the bottom line. So again, we have all these different halachos that distinguish arba kosos, the 4 cups, from Kiddush, that the 4 cups are going to need to be on a higher level. Everybody's chayiv, it needs to be at night. And when possible, though we can use grape juice, we should do our very best to use wine.